Hello, my name is Mike Hill. I am the marriage pastor at Beltway Park Church and the director of the Center for Biblical Resolution in Abilene, Texas. Our pathway today is bringing peace in the midst of life's difficult situations. For far too long, we, the body of Christ, have kicked the can of disagreements and confrontation down the road instead of standing for righteousness, healing, and restoration in the tough times of life. What we want to talk about today is the need to focus on legacy instead of loss, embrace creative problem solving instead of forced resolution, and look to the future with hope instead of allowing our mistakes and failures to define us. I'm going to start things off today by talking about the need to bring peace among life's difficult situations. We have fought alongside couples for their marriages only to kick them to the curb when they decide that they want a divorce. For any number of reasons, a couple is making one of the most difficult decisions of their lives. We, the body of Christ, tell them that they are stained, damaged, and dirty. This session will explore how we can stand with all believers when they are confronted with one of the darkest times of their lives. Joining me in this session, next to me, to my left, is Christine Rankin. Christine's a local attorney that loves Jesus and wants to help hurting families. She's going to talk about the emotional and financial costs of litigation. Following Christine, Dr. Randall Kennison from Portland, Oregon, will talk about the nuts and bolts to navigate church leadership conflict. And then Paul and Kim Lufkin from Southlake, Texas, is here to share the wrong way to right wrongs from 1 Corinthians 6, verses 1 through 11. And at 5 o'clock this afternoon, all five of us will join in for a question and answer roundtable. We would love to hear from you guys about any question that you might have about topics that we're covering, things that we've said in our talks, and just discuss in general the idea of bringing peace into unpeaceful situations. First off, I want to thank ACU and the summit in general, but I want to thank David Ray and Leah Andrews in particular for this incredible opportunity to share our story and our heart for marriage, for family, for church life, church leadership, and the overwhelming desire to bring more peace in a very hostile world that we live in today. And I think we can all agree that we live in a hostile world. What a privilege it is to be a part of a ministry that started over 114 years ago to reach the body of Christ with healing and restoration and to challenge us all to love one another. So let's get started. Today, we're a country that is at war. We're at war on our southern borders. We're at war in several other countries. We're at war with one another over politics, Supreme Court, right to life, and whose lives are important and whose lives are not. One of the areas that's closest to my heart is families, and especially when a couple is struggling going through a divorce. I've been counseling with couples for over 30 years, attempting to assist them on the road to reconciliation. I would love to be able to report to you today that we have been overwhelmingly successful and most marriages and families have been restored, but that's just simply not the truth. Divorce has been happening since before we were ever a country. We know that Jesus, Paul, and even Moses dealt with divorce from scriptures. Let's look at a few numbers reflecting marriage in just the United States in a report from Aaron McDowell with Business Insider. When it comes to divorce statistics, there are a lot of myths out there. You might have heard that half of all marriages end in divorce, but that divorce fact is actually fiction. Even as the future of marriages become uncertain during the coronavirus pandemic. So number one, in 2018, there were more than 782,000 divorces and annulments in the United States. Even though that number may sound extremely high, the divorce rate is actually dropping. In 2018, there were only 2.9 divorces per 1,000 total people, excluding data from California, Hawaii, Indiana, Minnesota, and New Mexico. These states did not participate in compiling this data. The divorce rate has lowered considerably compared to past years. The New York Times reported in 2015, the divorce rate was 3.1 per 1,000 people. And in 2000, the rate was 4.0 per 1,000 people. Although we see the divorce rate dropping, it's still approximately 39% of all marriages will end in divorce. While this percentage is not the appalling 50% divorce rate, it's still a huge number. And number two, about half of all mothers who have custody of their children have child support agreements. In 2014, there were more than 13.4 million parents separated from the child's other parent living with children under the age of 21. 5 out of 6 parents are mothers, custodial parents, and about half of whom receive child support. Among parents who have child support agreements, less than half receive the full amount of support that they're entitled to. According to a CBS report, more than 30% of child support payments are evaded altogether, and less than half of all child support payments are paid in full. Financial troubles are commonplace for single parents, making the need for child support even greater. Most times, custodial parents find themselves unable to even go to court to fight for the child support they were promised. The poverty rate for custodial mother families was more than 29%. Number three, according to a recent census survey, about half of all African American children in the U.S. lived in single parent households where the primary caregiver had full or partial custody. And number four, young girls who grow up without their fathers may experience trouble in their relationships. A study shows that young women who lack the presence of their father experience fewer educational prospects and weakened physical health than young women who had intact families. Linda Nielsen, a professor at Wake Forest University who studies father-daughter relationships and conducted the study, also found that young girls who grew up without the presence of their fathers may be more likely to divorce and have other issues within their personal relationships. Number five, the average age for people going through a divorce for the first time is 30 years old. According to a recent report, more than half of divorces involve spouses who are between the age of 25 and 39. However, while 30 is the average age, the divorce rate for people over 50 has doubled since 1990. Experiencing a gray divorce can take a toll on mental health and finances. One study reports that those who experience a gray divorce experience worse depression than those whose partners died. The LA Times also reports that divorced women over 50 experienced a 45% drop in their standard of living. Number six, most Americans believe that divorce is preferable to staying in an unhappy marriage. While divorce is certainly one part of life that no one wants to experience, 58% of Americans agree that divorcing is preferable to staying in an unhappy marriage. A larger majority, 67%, said that divorcing is better for the children involved than parents who are unhappy with each other after staying together. Why did I bring up all these examples? Because these are things that are happening in our country, whether we acknowledge it or whether we think that it's okay, whether we disagree with it scripturally, it's happening. All these people are in our churches across America. These are people that are hurting and desperately need encouragement and help from the body of Christ. Some of the help could come in the way of a marriage ministry to help a couple grow a healthy marriage. Here at Beltway, we do a marriage ministry called Re-Engage, and it's been incredible. We've seen great miraculous healings of marriages, but not everybody sticks with it. Not everybody will go through Re-Engage, and not every town or church has a Re-Engage, but we need more marriage ministry at more churches. Other help might be in a robust premarital counseling ministry to assist couples in starting a marriage when the best opportunity to grow and flourish instead of grinding to a halt and separating. Again, we use Dr. Les and Leslie Parrott's material, SYMBIS, Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts, for all of our premarital couples. And we like to think that we are helping them build a stronger foundation so that they have a better opportunity to have a healthy marriage as they're going on and growing. We can all be more proactive to help marriages and families thrive and walk in healthiness. But you know, sometimes couples just make the choice to not stay married for a variety of reasons. I totally get the scriptures that deal with divorce. I know that Malachi 2 says that God hates divorce. But the truth is that there are a lot of couples in church today that are going through a divorce. And the question is, what is the body of Christ doing to help these people out? When we started the Center for Biblical Resolution 2 years ago, I interviewed 6 people that I knew had gone through a divorce. One of the questions I asked each of them was, how did you feel about church when you were going through your divorce? And to my surprise, they all 6 responded with the exact same word, abandoned. I began to think back at all the couples I could remember at the time that we worked so hard to reconcile their marriages, only to hear them tell me they had decided to not stay married. What did I have for them at that moment? I felt totally defeated, thinking all I could tell them in that moment was to go hire your attorneys, rip each other apart, and when you're done, come back and we'll get you into divorce care. I know in my heart I was hurting for them and their kids. And divorce care is an incredible class. I would recommend it 100% of the time for people who've gone through a divorce. But really, is that all that I could do? Is that the best I could do? I hate divorce. I hate all the damage it does to families, to individuals, to kids. I hate all the things that lead up to divorce and are the reasons that cause people to consider and go through with getting a divorce. And the ones I mentioned are just the ones in the household. There's also damage to people outside the household, to parents, to grandparents, to aunts and uncles, close friends. Yes, I hate divorce, but I don't hate divorced people. Regardless of their part in the breakup, they're hurting people and they're in need of love of Jesus and the care of the church. We're not talking about a church sanctioned divorce here. If it were up to me, every couple would be healthy, love and serve God, reach people for his kingdom. But let's also be real. Couples are divorcing. What is the body of Christ doing to help the healing process of the individuals involved? Listen, our heads in the sand doesn't lessen the number or the severity of divorce. I believe we need to be available. We need to assist in the healing process and let them know that we are not abandoning them. People make mistakes all the time, but it seems to me in churches that I've been a part of and groups of people I've been a part of that we choose this one choice to be the thing that God will not forgive, but will instead place a big red D on their chest and declare them unclean. When did that happen? I thought the blood of Christ cleansed me from every sin in spite of the depth of my sin. Our focus is always on reconciliation here at the Center for Biblical Resolution, but sometimes that just isn't going to happen. When reconciliation isn't an option, we want to walk with the individuals to a place of healthiness, emphasizing restructuring the family instead of dividing it. We want to embrace creative problem solving instead of forced resolution. We want to strive to salvage a relationship even when the marriage is not going to survive, especially when kids are involved. We believe they can be better co-parents, less adversarial, and more partnership. Parents will be connected through their kids for the rest of their lives, even if they're not married. And when the kids are grown, they'll be connected through grandkids. Divorce doesn't have to be a war. A war is chosen. It isn't necessary. The church can become a place of healing and restoration, a place of peace. I don't think anyone ever gets married with the goal to divorce. You know, life happens and marriage can become hard and overwhelming. We don't want that to ever happen, but when it does, we don't want families to ever feel abandoned when they need the body of Christ the most. We can be way more creative through mediation than through litigation. We want to be there for recovery and for co-parenting when kids are involved. So what is mediation? Simply put, mediation is a neutral third party that can help facilitate creative choices for couples to bring as much peace as possible and maintain a relationship even if the marriage doesn't survive. The body of Christ needs to be the body of Christ in the really hard times, not just when things are going well. Relationships are just one area we want to assist folks in at the Center for Biblical Resolution. We can also help in elder care and estates, business, real estate, mediation, adoption, and foster care. The biblical part of biblical resolution is real simple. It's to love your neighbor as yourself and to love as Christ loved you. It's time we work at bringing more peace into a very hostile world. The body of Christ is to be salt and light to the world, to lead others to the love of Christ and bring healing and peace to hurting people, regardless of why they are hurting. So, Christine, you've been involved in the divorce industry for a while before you changed. So what's your thoughts about the CBR bringing more peace into a very unpeaceful situation?
Well, I think that the unpeaceful situation is because of the emotions that that the divorcing couple lets get to them. And so bringing peace obviously will benefit the whole family, especially the children, because any type of taking a child away from a parent is going to cause trauma for that child. And so if peace is brought about, it'll therefore lessen trauma.
Right. And I got to tell you, I've dealt with couples so often in the last 30 years. And one of the biggest things that I see is when that breakup happens and one parent has a child, and it's really difficult for that one parent with the child most of the time to find any healing and restoration because they have struggles finding help with the child. And that's where the body of Christ could come in so much, is helping single parents with their kids, helping them with all the details, helping with monetarily and financially and all the struggles that they have. And it's just appalling to me that some of the things that happen in this country, and we can be the ones that make up that difference.
Absolutely.
So Christine and I decided we were going to co-host the first session today, and she's going to talk a little bit on the emotional and financial cost of litigation. And so I'm going to turn this over to Christine and let her do her talk.
Thanks, Mike. My name is Christine Rankin, and I'm currently an attorney for the Department of Family and Protective Services. So I deal a lot with abused and neglected children. Recently became board certified in child welfare law. And I'm also an adjunct professor at ACU, teaching this semester sociology to families, and in other semesters I teach crime and delinquency and social deviance. The financial costs of a divorce or child custody battle it is very, very expensive. You are looking on the low end at a $3,000 retainer, and then at the high end, about $20,000 for the retainer. I don't think that couples or individuals realize just how quickly you go through that retainer. It's the $100 email. Or you call your attorney to ask a question, and you don't realize how quickly that retainer goes away, and you find yourself in a position of needing to come up with more and more money, especially when attorneys charge anywhere from $200 to $500 an hour, depending on how long they've practiced and whether or not they're board certified and if that's their specialty. So you're looking at, just to discuss your case with an attorney, $3,000, $4,000. That's before you ever go into a courtroom. And I think a lot of people are surprised by that, because when they make that retainer, they think, well, this is going to cover the cost of the divorce, of the child custody, and it doesn't. Then you look at court hearings for temporary orders, maybe for additional temporary orders leading up to a final, and those are going to be roughly between $1,500 and $3,000 every time you go to court. because the attorney is preparing for that, then the time during court, and the time that they had to set aside for that. So courts now, almost all courts, if there's children involved, will refer the case to what's called mediation. And kind of what we also do here. That cost, though, for mediation is roughly $3,000. You're paying for the mediator, and then you're paying for your attorney's time, the other party's paying for their attorney's time, and usually you split the cost of the mediator. But that's an additional $3,000. So you've, on the low end, made your $3,000 retainer, maybe had some $1,500 to $3,000 court hearings, now a $3,000 mediation. And so already, if it's on the low end, you're looking at around $10,000, and you don't have a final order yet. Bench trials, you can look at another $3,000 to $5,000 if the trial is in front of a judge. If the trial's in front of a jury, that's completely different, and that alone can be anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000. And so in my own situation, having gone through this, that's why this is so close to my heart, because I did go through this, and I did become really financially bankrupt. My son could have a complete college education paid for with the amount of money that my ex and I spent on fighting each other over custody. And so there is a huge incentive if you can put away some of your own differences, if you can have peace instead of hostility, that also is going to benefit the children financially, because you're not spending what would be their college education on fighting each other. And so there's also, when you brought up peace, there's also an incentive for attorneys that are practicing family law. There's an incentive for things to be contentious between the parties, because the more parent fights with another parent, they're going to make more phone calls to their attorney, more emails, more court hearings, because things will come up. And so financially speaking, for a family law attorney, it might not be in their best interest for there to be peace between the couple going through this. And so I think that's what really sets the CBR apart from other things, is because we're not looking, we're not asking or needing, that type of profit, and being peace-centered, obviously, will keep each party from becoming just financially bankrupt in the process. There's also just the emotional bankruptcy. If you haven't gone through divorce, if your parents haven't gone through divorce, maybe you don't have friends that you're close to that went through divorce, you don't know really what you're getting into. It's something, litigation is just something that it completely consumes you. It becomes what you think about all day, all night. It's something that you're fearful of. And having been an attorney going through this, you would think, oh, Christine, you should have been fine through this. You're an attorney, you know what to expect. And that's not the case. Even as an attorney, knowing what to expect on certain things, I still had the fear. I still had the sleepless nights and just the constant worry of, what will that next court hearing bring? Will I lose my child in that next court hearing? What is my life going to look like after this is all over? And so with all of that, just a huge sense of emotions that are overwhelming sometimes, usually you would go talk to someone in the church about this. But there is the stigma,
right?
Are we letting people, really say that it's okay to come into these doors and talk about things that are potentially sinful? And so again, with a stigma, it's not something that you really want to talk about with your church friends. If you're involved in a small group, I think you might bring that up, especially if they're asking for prayer. But with the stigma, because of the situation, I think that people don't feel comfortable coming to the church and talking about something that is a very, very, very important part of their life, and it's a huge part of their children's lives. So I would say for myself personally, having gone through this process, and it took about 2 years, it really stole a lot of the joy of becoming a mother from me, just because of the worry, going to court constantly, and just going through the process. And so I think, you know, anything that brings about peace will bring about joy, and allow you to keep some of your joy from becoming a parent and parenting your child. So I think people walk away, and I know for myself was true, just feeling completely broken, completely fragile, toxic. And I recall when I was preparing for today, I was going through some of the prayer requests that I had made, to people, you know, back in 2015 when this was going on. And I found one that I had sent to Beltway, basically stating that I felt that I was empty, and that my heart was hardened, and I wanted to make sure that it didn't stay that way. So I think that there's a huge emotional toll, and people need the support of the church going through that. Then the effects on your spiritual life. Of course, it's difficult to really, you know, talk with God if it's just a bargaining process. Right. You know, right. I do remember that, you know, my prayers became more of, please God, let me win at this. Let this outcome happen for me. And little by little, as the process went on, that was really all I was praying for. You know, wasn't praying for anything else in my life, just that this would go well. And so I found it difficult to be thankful about things, you know, and I wasn't thanking God about all the good things in my life, for having a healthy child, for having a good job, those type of things. I was just so focused on what the outcome was going to be. And so in prayer groups, again, with the stigma, you don't necessarily want to bring it up, but it's something that the church needs to say to its congregation, that it's okay to talk about these things. It's okay to ask for prayer about these things. And we're not going to turn you away if you say that you're going through that. So the Center for Biblical Resolution, you know, I see it as a ministry to the whole family. Right. Not just the parties that are going against each other, but the whole family. And the whole family can include extended family, because as you know about anyone going through these type of things, you also lose, in a sense, the other partner's family. And so if everyone, you know, goes to the same church, there's then that split. And so when we're measuring success with the Center for Biblical Resolution, you know, one of the measurements, of course, is, you know, the couple stays together and the family unit is whole, and there's not that division. But when you can't achieve that, I think that you then have to look at each individual, you know, their emotional well-being, their spiritual well-being, and the children. You know, minimizing trauma to the children should be a parent's number one priority. It should be a court's number one priority, and it's just not. I think something that people take for granted is church life for the children after divorce. Yeah. Oftentimes, as I'm sure you've seen, when a couple divorces, the kids go to a different church for 2 days, for 2 Sundays a week. Is that about what you've seen?
Yeah, it's every other week they're here, every other week they're somewhere else. Yeah.
Right. And how can a child really foster a relationship with their peers, with their Sunday school teacher, their spiritual support group, when you're putting them church to church every other week? And so, you know, it's something to encourage parents. Set some of the selfishness aside, set your emotions aside. And if you are so uncomfortable that you feel that you need to go to a different church, maybe allow the parents still attending the church, so that the children have that family, church family already established. Pick them up, take them to church, let them be with their Sunday school class, let them be with their group, and worship together and find healing within the group, instead of taking them Sunday to Sunday to somewhere new. And so I think that, you know, by bringing peace, by keeping the emotions lower than they would be if this was a lawsuit in a courtroom, I think then you're able to really put the children first and look at what are things that we can do not to traumatize these children.
You know, that point right there, I didn't realize it until you just brought it up, but I know several couples that have come through the CBR, and we've done their mediation. And I know for a fact that those kids are in the same Sunday school class every week, and different parent may bring them to the class every other week, but they're still bringing them to the same class. And we didn't make such a big deal out of it, but they saw that on their own and decided that was the healthiest thing to do for their kids.
Well, right. I think with having peace and promoting peace during the process, they can look at things outside their own bubble, outside their own emotions.
Well, and outside the norm that we've created in this country through litigation. Yeah.
Or there's a lot of situations where the child doesn't go to church. So maybe 2 times a week. I've seen that a lot, where the other parent just kind of pieces out to the church and church life, and whether it's because they felt abandoned or they're making different life choices, there's a huge consequence for the children to not having that type of consistency. So I think keeping the family healthy, you know, is a measurement of success. Also collaterals, the friends and family, keeping extended family, holidays. The holidays don't go away just because you have a divorce, and finding ways to have successful holidays and peace, because oftentimes you hear when it comes Thanksgiving, every pastor starts preaching about making it through the holidays. And so I think helping with extended families through the process is also really good. And I know in Abilene and some other counties that I practiced in, courts are clogged. You are looking at sometimes 6 months to a year just to get that final order in. And that's a long time to be in limbo. And so the CBR minimizes that. I mean, if it's something that can't be accomplished, if reconciliation of the family unit is not an option anymore, we do the mediations relatively quickly. So a family is not in limbo. The children aren't just sitting there wondering, where am I going to go? Who am I going to live with? Are we going to keep the same house? And so I think with the clogged court system, this type is, you know, obviously takes it off the court's dockets. So they only have to worry about setting up for a final hearing. And they really just bring their mediated settlement agreement paperwork in and don't have a hearing at all.
Not anymore.
No. And so I think that's really good for them, where when we have the mediation, it's over. There's closure.
And I think from the ones that we've dealt with so far, the issue of not paying child support or paying half of it has not been an issue with the couples we've dealt with.
No.
because there's more concern by both parents about the well-being of the kids.
Right.
Right. And so they kind of team up to make sure the kids are okay.
Mm-hmm. And I know of some mediations that we did too, where the parents were able, and even though one parent has moved out, wanted the kids to stay in the home, you know, the home that they knew, that they grew up with. And so I think any type of keeping the consistencies where you can for the children is beneficial.
Right. Right. Well, I had a question for you. So do you think, now this may be a pie in the sky type thing, but do you think that realistically that we could hope for and pray for, if reconciliation is not going to take place, that there can be more, like on the line of the CBR, than through attorneys, and still be healthy? As a matter of fact, I think more healthy and better for the family. Do you think that's a realistic view, or is it just my heart wanting that to happen? I realize not everybody's going to go through a CBR. They're going to have attorneys, because one or the other is not going to want to play fair.
Right.
And so we have to do that. And of course, we encourage every couple to let an attorney look at the paperwork and make sure it's all done. Everybody trusts everything that's being done. But and I know that some are not going to do that, and they're going to have attorneys. But we could have a hope that there's more, if they're going to get to that point that they're not going to stay together, that they consider mediation rather than going through litigation.
I think that it's hopeful, and I think getting the courts involved, getting more attorneys on board with this, because obviously it's going to eat into their potential income. So I don't know that it's necessarily going to be a popular topic or a popular route to take for those practicing family law, but getting attorneys on board, getting judges on board with this, I think then you'll have